Any fool can be happy. It takes a man with real heart to make beauty out of the stuff that makes us weep.
Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about books, literary, horror, classics, and contemporary, and where I am obsessed with ranking things. I like rankings, I like horror, and I like quizzes. So in this video, I've combined the three to create a ranking/quiz of the top 20 most popular horror books of all time. To determine what horror books are the most popular, I used exclusively Goodreads. After perusing various lists and looking up all the viable candidates, I ranked the books according to how many ratings they received. And to turn the ranking into a quiz, I'll start by giving you a clue, an extract from a reader's review. I'll give you a couple of seconds to guess before revealing the book. Then I'll share with you a condensed version of the synopsis or blurb, and I'll share with you also two extracts from readers' reviews, one from a 1-star review and one from a 5-star review. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing, especially if you like horror and rankings. Do you think you have an idea of what books made the list? How many will you be able to guess based on the clues? And how many of these popular horror books have you read? And what do you think of the review extracts? We'll find out after this short intro sequence featuring the music of Alfred Schnittke, and I'll see you on the other side to rank the top 20 most popular horror books of all time. Kicking off our ranking at number 20. While I thought the author crafted a creepy and plausible villain for an era where mass murder seems to be the new normal, I couldn't believe that a supposedly respected former policeman would behave like this. Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King from 2014. With over 300,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.0. A lone driver plows through the crowd in a stolen Mercedes. 8 people are killed, 15 are wounded. The killer escapes. Months later, an ex-cop named Bill Hodges, still haunted by the unsolved crime, gets a crazed letter claiming credit for the murders. It wasn't a hit with everyone. For example, from this 1-star review, I cannot even begin to describe how disappointing the characters were to me in this book. Apparently, Blockbuster was giving away the last of their cardboard cutouts the day King wrote this mess. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, hands down one of my favorite books by Uncle Stevie. King doesn't waste any time bringing the horror. Brady Hartsfield is an evil psychopath that you love to hate. At number 19, as horror goes, it's fairly tame, but I really loathe mushrooms and they were horrific. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia from 2020. With over 319,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 3.68, the lowest of any book on this list. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Noemi Taboada heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. Mesmerized by the terrifying yet seductive world of High Place, Noemi may soon find it impossible to ever leave this enigmatic house behind. Some readers were not impressed, as testifies this 1-star review. This book is deceptive and bland. It promises Mexico, but the setting could be England and you'd never know the difference. It promises horror, yawn. This is predictable, slow, not even close to scary. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, Mexican Gothic begins in such an unassuming way where you think you're walking into a traditional haunted house story, and then everything shifts to pull you under like a riptide that doesn't loosen until you turn the final page. Number 18. a thriller that led to countless ripoffs and even the eventual collapse of the franchise due to its own success. Red Dragon by Thomas Harris from 1981. With over 323,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.05. Graham is the greatest profiler the FBI ever had, but the physical and mental scars of capturing Hannibal Lecter have caused Graham to go into early retirement. Now, Graham must turn to Lecter for help. It wasn't a universal hit, for example from this one-star review. The story is plain and predictable. It was disturbing for the sake of being disturbing. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, I watched both the movies and the TV show. The books are in a league of their own. I was completely drawn in right from the very first page, and despite having a slight idea of the story, there are major differences between books, movies, TV show. I still couldn't turn the pages fast enough to find out what would happen. At number 17, Spooktacular, Fangtastic, and 4 bloodthirsty stars for a book by an author that needs no introduction. Salem's Lot by Stephen King from 1975. With over 431,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.05. 2 terrified people must return to Salem's Lot for a final confrontation with the unspeakable evil that lives on in the town. Some readers were not impressed. For example, from this 1-star review. It's like The Haunting of Hill House and Dracula had a baby they were both a little embarrassed about. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, this is a rich story full of great themes about society, the power of faith, men versus boys, and even love and salvation. It was an absolute dream to read. Number 16. I'm not a huge fan of zombie books, but this one caught my imagination, and I think there's definitely material here for a sequel to the film. World War Z by Max Brooks from 2006. With over 511,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.02. The zombie war came unthinkably close to eradicating humanity. Max Brooks recorded the testimony of men, women, and sometimes children who came face to face with the living, or at least the undead, hell of that dreadful time. Opinions varied. For example, from this 1-star review, the pseudo-government reports the book is written in handicap it in many ways. There are no protagonists to grow with, no story arc, no climax, etc. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, this book took the well-worn concept of the world is being taken over by zombies and turned it into a global thriller that looked at the struggle from a series of different viewpoints that explore the social, political, environmental, and financial effects of such events. Number 15. A tribute to the Jungle Book. The setting is spookier. Instead of animals, we have ghosts and other magical beings. The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman from 2008. With over 522,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.15. Bod lives in a graveyard being raised and educated by ghosts, with a solitary guardian who belongs to neither the world of the living nor the world of the dead. But it is in the lands of the living that real danger lurks, for it is there that the man Jack lives, and he has already killed Bod's family. Not a universal hit, as testifies this 1-star review. I wasted good time of my life that I can never get back on this book. That went utterly nowhere. Neil, your writing is great, but sadly, you forgot someone in the background screaming, "Give me more vavoom!" On the other hand, from this 5-star review, for having such a sinister beginning and heavy life and death themes, it's the Jungle Book set in a graveyard, this book is a real joy to read. Number 14. After reading the first in the series, I've been dying to sink my teeth into, no pun intended, this one for a good while now. The film adaptation is one of my favorite films of all time. The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris from 1988. With over 536,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.24. Clarice Starling, a young trainee at the FBI Academy, is surprised to be summoned by Chief of the Bureau's Behavioral Science Section. Her assignment? To interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal the Cannibal, a former psychiatrist with a grisly history, unusual tastes, and an intense curiosity about the darker corners of the mind. Not everyone loved this classic. For example, from this one-star review, I cannot ignore the transphobia, fat-shaming, homophobia, and sexism in this book. I'd heard nothing but great things about this one, but I don't think it aged well at all. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, unquestionably one of the best books ever written in the thriller genre. I'm incredibly hesitant to call anything contemporary a modern-day masterpiece, but there are a handful of exceptions, and this offering from Thomas Harris is undoubtedly one of them. Number 13, a Gothic novella by a Scottish author. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson from 1886. With over 545,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 3.83. Set in the grimy streets of Victorian London, this tale of murder, split personality, and obscure science, with its chilling final revelation, became an instant horror classic when it was first published, and has enthralled and terrified generations of readers ever since. Some readers do not agree. For example, from this one-star review, fiction over 120 years old, with its impossible English, awkward structuring, and lacrimonious sentimentality, gives me a rash. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, Stevenson's dark atmospheric prose and choice of using multiple narrators makes this unique from the adaptation and worthwhile even for those who know the story inside and out. It is also a super quick and easy read, definitely worth picking up. At number 12, rather than a gory blood and guts type of horror, this is a slow burn, queasy unease that explodes in the final chapters. It's not just about the scares with this one, but the contemplation of how grief can turn any of us into a monster. Pet Sematary by Stephen King from 1983. With over 560,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.05. As a family, they've got it all. But the nearby woods hide a blood-chilling truth more terrifying than death itself and hideously more powerful. Some readers were not impressed. For example, from this one-star review, I didn't feel any connection to any of the characters. I liked the cat, though. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, at a few parts, I even thought about putting the book down because it was all too much, but I just couldn't. I wasn't even able to stop reading because I was dying, no pun intended, to know what was going to happen next. Number 11, a kind of Catcher in the Rye for goths. It was a deliciously creepy read, but I don't think I will be reading any of the sequels. Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice from 1976. With over 569,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.02. Louis recounts his journey through mortal and immortal life, how he became a vampire at the hands of the radiant and sinister Lestat, and how he became indoctrinated, unwillingly, into the vampire way of life. In the streets of New Orleans, he discovers the exquisite lost young child Claudia, wanting not to hurt but to comfort her with the last breaths of humanity he has inside. Yet, he makes Claudia a vampire, trapping her womanly passion, will, and intelligence inside the body of a small child. Here's an extract from a 1-star review. If you like reading about vampires complaining, you might like this. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, the whole story comes along with a good measure of dark sensuality, which I particularly like. It presents, in a very captivating way, problems which have been haunting humanity since forever. People tortured by guilt and loneliness, who feel different than everybody else, who are tormented by the thought that their looks do not show their true self and that the others are unable to see past the surface. Kicking off the top 10, nothing beats the real Wild West, except a dark fantasy-infested badass character exposition starting one of the best fantasy horror hybrid series of all times. The Gunslinger by Stephen King from 1982. With over 593,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 3.93. Grippingly realistic and eerily dreamlike, Roland, a loner on a spellbinding journey, pursues the Man in Black, encounters an alluring woman named Alice, and begins a friendship with the kid from Earth called Jake. Loved by many, but not by all. For example, from this one-star review, too vague in places, too patronizing in others. I am at a loss to understand the manic hysteria over this book. I've had enough of cigarette-rolling, pontificating, shoot-'em-up cowboys. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, part fantasy, part western, part post-apocalypse, while it's the first book in a series, it's quite satisfying to read on its own. At number 9, fairy tale vibes mixed with a bit of uneasy horror. It reads like a weird fever dream that has you question the monsters you feared as a child. The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman from 2013. With over 595,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.02. A middle-aged man returns to his childhood home to attend a funeral. As he sits by a pond behind the ramshackle old farmhouse, the unremembered past comes flooding back. And it is a past too strange, too frightening, too dangerous to have happened to anyone, let alone a small boy. This one didn't work on everyone. For example, from this 1-star review, a lightweight Hollywood cinematic fantasy containing only recycled ideas, cliched, unrealistic events, and absolutely nothing new. It is a novella too short in which to build anything meaningful, but still there's plenty for a meaningless blockbuster. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, this book is so short and so devastatingly lovely. It's beautifully written and emotional. It made me scared, it made my heart hurt, and it made me smile. Number 8. Take the buttons off your eyes and face alternative horror reality, girl. Coraline by Neil Gaiman from 2012. At over 652,000 ratings, it's received an average star rating of 4.11. Caroline steps through a door to find another house strangely similar to her own, with another mother and father who want to change her and never let her go. Coraline will have to fight with all her wits and courage to save herself and return to her ordinary life. Here's an extract from a 1-star review. A primary-aged reader might find the plot scary. I thought it was just plain weird, and I honestly don't understand why it has received so many 4- and 5-star reviews. On the other hand, here's an extract from a 5-star review. Without being preachy, Gaiman sends all the right messages about fear and bravery, family and love. The writing also transported me to that magical, scary place and made me feel what Coraline feels. Number 7. After reading that the author wrote her as the personification of cocaine, I totally understand why she is so terrifying, even in the rare moments when she is acting nice. Misery by Stephen King from 1987. With over 659,000 ratings, it has received an average star rating of 4.21. Misery Chastain was dead. Paul Sheldon had just killed her. She was the heroine of a string of bestsellers, and now he wanted to get on to some real writing. That's when the car accident happened, and he woke up in pain in a strange bed. Annie Wilkes had pulled him from the wreck and brought him to her remote mountain home. She was Paul's #1 fan, and when she found out what he had done to Misery, she didn't like it. She didn't like it at all. Speaking of not liking it, here's an extract from a 1-star review. The main problem is repetition and filler. King writes like a naughty schoolboy who hasn't read the book he's reporting on, so he just uses lots of filler. On the other hand, here's an extract from a 5-star review. It's a real page-turner, but this book is more than just a thriller, just like King is more than just a pulp writer. In Misery, it's almost like we get to watch King write the story, like he actually comes with us and makes the discoveries at the same time we do. Number 6. This supernatural horror novel set the stage for his illustrious career. Carrie by Stephen King from 1974. With over 683,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 3.98. The story of misunderstood high school girl Carrie White, her extraordinary telekinetic powers, and her violent rampage of revenge. Here's an extract from a 1-star review. I didn't appreciate the insulting tone against Christian religious beliefs. On the other hand, here's an extract from a 5-star review. With its themes of power, isolation, and the consequences of unchecked cruelty, Carrie is a must-read that continues to leave an indelible mark on the literary landscape. At number 5, despite the huge cast of characters and the epic scope, the story is simply amazing. The Stand by Stephen King from 1978. With over 736,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 4.35, the highest of any book on this list. The apostate of death, his worn-down boot heels tramping the night roads, his time is at hand. His empire grows in the west, and the apocalypse looms. Here's an extract from a 1-star review. Amazing writing and development, but it was so lengthy that the good bits got lost in a sea of utter crap. Here's an excerpt from a 5-star review. The definitive apocalypse masterpiece, maybe until reality writes a better story. Number 4. It was really long with a lot of descriptions. Still very enjoyable, but the ending totally ruined it for me. It by Stephen King from 1986. With over 1,056,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 4.25. They were 7 teenagers when they first stumbled upon the horror. Now they are grown up, but none of them can withstand the force that has drawn them back to Derry to face the nightmare without an end and the evil without a name. This book is loved, but not universally so. Here's an extract from a 1-star review. King of horror? More like king of over-describing everything. I don't need a whole page listing names of pills, thank you. On the other hand, here's an extract from a 5-star review. Reading it every 11 years might just be the tradition I need, because let's face it, I need it in my 30s, just like I needed it in my 20s, just like I needed it at 10. Our minds change, our bodies change, but so much remains the same. At number 3, a tight-knit group of overly sentimental, self-proclaimed servants of God seek him out to destroy him. Dracula by Bram Stoker from 1897. With over 1,209,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 4.01. When Jonathan Harker visits Transylvania to help Count Dracula with the purchase of a London house, he makes a series of horrific discoveries about his client. An apparently unmanned ship is wrecked off the coast of Whitby, a young woman discovers strange puncture marks on her neck, and the inmate of a lunatic asylum raves about the Master and his imminent arrival. Here's an extract from a one-star review. All the male characters descended into blubbering worshippers of the two female characters, and by the end of the novel, I was wishing Dracula could snack on all of them and be done with it. On the other hand, here's an extract from a 5-star review. The opening chapters alone provide some of the most gripping, suspense-inducing, edge-of-seat anxieties I've ever read, all leading up to a delightfully queer twist with a male character stepping in for the traditional Gothic heroine. At number 2, this early creation read sloppy in some places. I much prefer the sequel. The Shining by Stephen King from 1977. With over 1,423,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 4.26. This tale of a troubled man hired to care for a remote mountain resort, his loyal wife, and their uniquely gifted son slowly unfolds as secrets from the Overlook Hotel's past are revealed, and the hotel itself attempts to claim the very souls of the Torrance family. From a 1-star review, I disliked the book. Its terrible dialogue, its lack of subtlety, ambiguity, or mystery, and its ridiculous use of hedge animals and fire hoses. On the other hand, from this 5-star review, about as perfect a haunted house story as can be, King was at his best here. And claiming the number 1 spot of the most popular horror book of all time, according to users of Goodreads, an Arctic explorer writes a letter to his sister. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley from 1818, the oldest book on the list. With over 1,515,000 ratings, it has an average star rating of 3.86. Victor Frankenstein plunders graveyards for the material to fashion a new being, but his botched creature, denied human companionship, sets out to destroy his maker and all that he holds dear. Some readers do not hold this book dear. Here's an example of a 1-star review. Giving consciousness to inanimate flesh is not the most improbable event in this story, which is lousy with coincidences and conveniences. On the other hand, here's a 5-star review. Call it science fiction if you want, call it horror if you must, but this story is brimming with some of the most realistic and almost unbearably moving human emotion that I have ever read. So there you have it, the top 20 most popular horror books of all time, according to the users of Goodreads. From that list, I personally have only read 7, the highlights being World War Z, Dracula, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Most of my favorite horror books did not make the list, but I'm okay with that. There's a lot of variety in horror. There is a style, a voice, a niche, a subgenre in horror for every kind of reader, even for me. Some surprises from making this video. Of the hundreds of reviews I perused in preparation, the 1-star reviews for Carrie were the meanest and nastiest of the lot. No matter how good a book is, it's going to get some 1-star reviews. But among the Carrie haters out there, there are some mean and angry readers. But at least they were not left indifferent, right? So how many were you able to guess? Were the clues too easy? Too difficult? What was the biggest snub? Probably Shirley Jackson, right? I'd be curious to hear your reactions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.